Welcome to the Superhost Podcast, everyone. Joining me today is the owner and chief hospitality officer at Sagebrush Stays, Mr. Easton Hill.
Hey, how's
Thanks
it
for joining me,
going?
Easton. Thanks for joining me, man. Really nice to finally throw down with you.
Yeah, same to you. Excited to chat.
Now, in today's episode, no pets allowed, $0 cleaning fees are still trending. But we're going to start off with the recent news that a family recently filed a lawsuit against Airbnb after their 19-month-old daughter was found dead from a fentanyl exposure in a home in Wellington, Florida. They stayed at this place, it was listed on their platform, and our heart goes out to the family for their loss. But Easton, not only is this tragic, but we should talk about responsibilities and the greater implications of what's going on here. And I want to point out that I don't want to overstep the loss of this young lady because I know how tragic that can be. Isolating that on the side, host responsibilities of the platforms and previous guests is something that I want to touch on. So I want to pass it to you to get your feedback and to start talking about this.
Yeah, certainly. Well, I think first off, you have to say it's a tragedy, and it's the kind of thing that we as hosts hope never happen in our own properties. And my heart goes out to the family and also the host where it happened, because it's just a tragedy all around. And the first thing that kind of comes to my mind when I think about this issue is that the lawsuit is actually being brought against Airbnb rather than this specific host. And so I think that's interesting from a legal perspective. We do have air cover and things like that that cover us as hosts. Um, but at the same time, also need to be aware of other insurance products that are out there for us as hosts. I know with my 10 unit portfolio that I have, I don't rely fully on Airbnb, VVRO, Booking, any of the OTAs where you list your site. They have great policies, but at the same time, I want to be able to make sure I have general liability for this sort of thing as well. So I think, that's one, you want to make sure you're covering yourself, both from the OTA, but then also your own insurance. And then second, I think you have to think what happened and what went wrong before the tragic incident happened. What was your guest screening procedure like? Did you make sure that the place was cleaned? Do your cleaning procedures involve enough of an in-depth search of the property to make sure that, fentanyl-laced drugs aren't left? I know I've had in my properties, I've had illicit drugs left after a weekend or whatnot, and that's something that our cleaners are actually looking out for. So, I think all of those business processes should be in place beforehand. Are you screening guests? Are you cleaning properly? Are you documenting properly? Do you have proper business insurance? Those are all things you can do to make sure this doesn't happen. And if it does happen, that you don't lose your business, your livelihood because of a massive tragedy like this.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. There's a couple things that I don't want to say I want to say don't make sense, right? So the in the reports there was allegedly a drug-fueled party several days before the family stayed in this.
Right.
The guests that had stayed prior booked on VRBO, and these guests, the family that had the incident, booked on Airbnb.
Oh, interesting.
The which this is there's a lot of questions that are being opened up in this in terms of finger pointing and responsibilities. But let's talk more about what the implications are. The guests stayed several days before this family had checked in, so clearly there wasn't a thorough cleaning process that had been done. Now, I'm not a medical doctor. I don't understand well enough or subject matter expert in things like this. So, how much of the product had been left behind to cause something like this, what to look out for. Now, I've never had a party like that before. It may have happened. We've had sex parties at the house before. They'd left like lots of fun stuff there,
Lots
which
of fun things for you to discover
yeah,
later.
lots of fun things that our cleaners were laughing at. But in any case, I don't mind what people do in the home, right? What I do mind is that what happens afterwards is everyone's responsible, right? You take what you've left, you leave the house the way that you had found it, and you make sure that nothing that would harm another guest is left behind. That's an important thing, right? And also, our cleaning team is fairly is fairly well trained to identify, just like yours, any type of potential issue that could arise, and they thoroughly clean the house. So it just is weird that this had happened. I don't know the specifics of it, but like, I mean, there's finger pointing all around, right? How could something like this happen? Is the previous guest responsible, or is the current host responsible? Is Airbnb and VRBO responsible? I don't know. It just sounds like a giant mess, and obviously this is going to trend for a while because it's going to open up a lot of bad media reports that are already pointing at Airbnb for allowing parties, even though they banned it now. Like, as you can see, this is going to come back and say, "Oh, well, you're not really doing a good job."
Yeah, and I think it's hard, whether it's VBRO or Airbnb's responsibility to ban a party, or it's a host's responsibility to kind of figure out what looks like a party that's about to happen in your place. I think that the key for me in all of this is like, how well does your business operate the turnover? Because even if there's a drug fueled party and drugs and alcohol are left, the place is left in total shambles. Before your next guest checks in, you need to have that
Absolutely.
place looking perfect again. Whether that means you yourself as an owner need to show up and work with your cleaners. And I think really the best operators that I talk to in this space have some sort of inspection capability built into their process, whether that's them as an owner going and inspecting the property before a guest arrives, whether that's a cleaning manager, whether they have, I know some folks out there who literally just have a 1099 person, just take, your average Lyft driver, or, DoorDash person who's out there making money, on an hour or contract basis. You could hire someone like that you trust, and train them. Say, hey, I need you to go to the property every time it turns over, and just be my eyes on the ground, so that there's some accountability for the cleaners and some accountability for how well it's been turned over. And I think
Definitely.
so some easy things you can do there that aren't that expensive. I mean, at $15 a turnover, like, that's not a crazy expense to make sure everything looks great for your next guest. So I think that's really where the host responsibility in all of this is.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And again, it's a tragedy that this had happened. Our hearts go out to the family and the host that is going through this, and I wish everyone well. Definitely going to keep an eye out on this one because it's definitely close to home. So the next topic I want to talk about is $0 cleaning fees. Earlier this year, there was a mad rush to certain new adjustments to the Airbnb system, the filter system, right? So transparent and all-in pricing was introduced. It's designed to help guests find accommodations for a set budget, right? And this forced many owners to rethink how they list their properties, and many of them opted to do a $0 cleaning fee to fit that bill. So, Easton, I know that you've tried this before because I think we
Mhm.
had a previous chat about this. So, you know, do you let people still stay at your homes without a cleaning fee, or do you make them, do you make them mop the floors before they leave to accommodate, or have you readjusted your thoughts? And what is your overall opinion on this topic?
Yeah, so high level, I am a big fan of zero chores, right? When I'm on
Yeah.
vacation, I don't want to be doing chores. It's one of the massive advantages that hotels offer their guests. It's a feature of staying in a hotel where you just can leave. There's no checkout instructions. You just shut the door and you're out, and that's it. And so I've
Yep.
tried to replicate that in my experience, where I don't ask our guests to do anything when they leave. And oftentimes they're very surprised. I'll send a message and I'll say, hey, like, we don't require any chores. You don't need to strip the beds, make the beds. You leave the towels where you drop them. Like, you don't need to do anything. You can just leave, because you do pay a cleaning fee in my business. When Airbnb announced transparent pricing, I kind of, like every other host, was like, maybe I can make more money if I go to $0, or maybe a $5 clean, something really, negligible. And so I actually I have a fourplex with 4 studio apartments. And so I put 2 of those studio apartments to zero cleaning fees. They're exactly the same units. They look exactly the same, priced exactly the same. So I went down to $0 cleaning fees and then just bumped up my nightly rate by, $15 to $20 to compensate for the loss in revenue there from the cleaning fee. And ultimately ran that experiment for 2 weeks. And it was actually a very negative experience in our case. Our those two listings dropped off the first page of Airbnb. We saw a reduction in bookings, reduction in visits to the listing, reduction in click through. Like every marketing metric fell.
That's
Um,
crazy.
and I know that other folks have had exactly the opposite experience of that, where they drop their cleaning fees and they shoot up and they get tons of bookings, right? Uh, Not the case for me. So I think in my market for my particular listing, what happened was as I increased the average daily rent of the place, I essentially priced myself out of the comparison set. And so I was no longer competitively priced against comparable properties. And then, we saw a resulting decline in almost every metric across the board. So for me, the $0 cleaning fee experiment was a bust. I know for other folks, it's been real positive. Long term, I think that guests expect to pay a cleaning fee as long as it's not egregious. Um, I think you're going to be fine. And as much as guests complain about it, I still see tons of bookings. So at the end of the day,
Yeah.
I don't like to pay for things either, but I ultimately do because I'd much rather go traveling than stay home.
Yeah, I hear you on that. And it's interesting because you are right. If you lower your cleaning fee, you need to make it up somewhere. Otherwise, your cash on cash is going to go down drastically. So for those who have eliminated the fee, either they're figuring out how to make it work or they're just losing potential revenue. Now, this doesn't work for everyone because some people have a cost that they have to obtain in order to pay their mortgage and all that stuff. But I got some notes here. Excuse me. So like the owners that were typically complaining about this were seeing in peak months that before the tool was rolled out, they were having 90% occupancy. And once that filter or that new feature came out, it started to go down to about 60, 70% during the peak, their peak times of the month. So I don't know if that is relevant for everyone because there's so many different factors that could lower the your vacancy, right? It could be war, high gas prices, it could be more supply. Like these are all real issues that are going on all the time. And I definitely have felt the same pain. I have not personally lowered or eliminated fees because I felt that doing so is going to be hurtful to the business, number one. Number two, I mean, it's we don't charge a ton of money, and like you, we don't have rules of what is required except turn off the fireplace, put out the fire. No, turn off like if you use the fire pit, make sure the fire's out. That kind of like the most realistic things.
Right. Basic
We
stuff.
basic stuff. What we do is we do say you're welcome to leave, make sure everything is safe. If you want to do something, you're more than welcome to strip the beds, leave it on the floor, and put your towel somewhere. Otherwise, just go and get home safe, right? It's because some guests do ask, "Hey, I want to do something before I go, but you're home." I'm like, it's not necessarily. No, no, we insist. We did a load of laundry. I'm like, don't do laundry. Like that's my
It's
cleaners are
actually,
gonna want to do laundry
I,
again.
I don't want them to do that.
Yeah,
Like I've
yeah,
got my
no, my
own process.
cleaners want to do it their way. Like, don't do that stuff.
Right.
So we do have instructions of like, if you want to, you're welcome to. So that's how we found that it worked. And or we look depending on the size of the property, and the amount of space, the cleaning fees vary. But we definitely like you, we don't do anything. No mowing the lawn, no washing the dishes, none of that stuff, right? And we found that it's worked well. And any type of natural drop has been, like I had said, I believe because war is active and it's not great news. Um, Fuel has been expensive. There's layoffs. It's your natural dips in business, but overall, and also supply, additional supply in markets. But overall, it's still doing fairly well. So if you don't have nothing else to add to that, I'll move on to the next topic.
Let's run it.
No pets allowed. So a recent study showed that only 6% of all Airbnb listings globally are pet friendly. As much as 50% of all pet owners, this is US, reported issues in finding accommodations. And I can obviously see why, right? Easton, why do you think that puppies and kitties are not welcomed in most, if not all, hosts' homes?
Well, I think there's some obvious reasons. I think that most Airbnb hosts are actually coming from like a less sophisticated background when it comes from business and real estate and property management. And so I think they take away like, oh, hey, when I rent a house or an apartment, typically dogs aren't allowed. And the implication for a long-term rental is that dogs cause damage or that cats cause damage, right? And that is true. That is true. However, what I have found in a short-term rental scenario is that because there's such limited supply of listings, one, you get a massive bump in your daily rents if you're allowing animals. And two, the folks that do bring animals are actually really conscientious. Some of my favorite guests are pet owners because they are like taking it up a notch. They want to make sure, like, hey, we didn't, we brought our own lint roller to get any hair off the couch. We did X, Y, and Z task to make sure our dog didn't make it. Like they're very great. Like you can tell they're grateful that they can travel with their dog. So, that being said, I can understand why some hosts don't allow it. You will have more damage. And you do have to have extra processes in place to manage the pet that you'll be hosting because you're not just hosting the humans at that point. You're also hosting, whatever pets come along with the humans.
Sure. So Fluffy definitely can leave hair everywhere. There's no
Yeah.
question about it. I looked at this topic deeply because I'm very much into figuring out how to make the best accommodations for families, and that includes pets, which are part of the family. The statistic just around, there being only 6% of global listings being pet friendly. The hosts that do allow pets have 2.1 times more bookings annually, which is striking. That's just like amazing, right? From a business perspective, it's good. On top of that, 20 to 30% higher nightly rate. So the ADR is about 20 to 30% higher. Now, it could be because of the pet fees. I'm not sure. Probably. But in any case, like you had said, if you're a pet owner, there are certain things that you understand. Most guests are not looking to bring Fido over to destroy the home. They just want to get away and not have to pay extra for a pet sitter, right? Or ask their cousin who they didn't really talk to in the last 3 years to come over and watch the feed the dog while they're gone with the cat. So I think that it's an incredibly missed business opportunity for anyone who's a host. And on top of that, I don't think that people are really understanding what the market needs are. Now, if I'm not mistaken, most hosts have 1 to 2 properties. If it's one property, it's usually their property that they have someone staying at, which I can understand. Maybe they have allergies, maybe they don't want dogs there. They're afraid of their own home being damaged, right? But air coverage is there specifically for that. Like you said, there are insurance products to cover real disasters, not just your pet damage and furniture replacements, but it's there for that specifically. And on top of that, it's just an overall misunderstanding of the dynamic of a family because not everyone has kids. Some people have kids and pets. Some people just have pets. So you're excluding a large section of the market. I think like I don't know the number of Airbnb users specifically that are pet owners. However, in the US, there's like double-digit million people who have pets. So I'm assuming some number of them go stay places. You're basically telling them no, and you're making them spend more instead of capturing that revenue. So like I can talk about this topic all day, every day. My homes are pet friendly specifically because I want to offer that. And I've also lost that connection to the home as it's mine, but it's like I'm sharing it with everyone. So like I overcame that many years ago.
Yeah, I approach all of my listings as a business. I don't have an emotional attachment to any of them.
That's good.
It's not
Yeah.
my furniture. I bought the furniture specifically for this purpose. It's entirely a business. So at the end of the day, like why would you not move forward when the numbers are so powerful. You're going to make more money, have longer stays, and typically, like, everything pays for itself. I pay my cleaner extra, so they make an additional fee on top of, what they typically
Yeah,
charge
same.
for a pet stay. We've got a vacuum with pet hair attachments. We've got all of the tools necessary so that from a business processes perspective, a pet fee is charged to guest. We've got a different cleaning process that happens. We do a different laundry cycle so that the next person isn't affected by a pet stay before them. So there's a variety of things like you need to do and master, but it's not like it's any hidden knowledge. Just Google quickly how to accommodate pets in your Airbnb, and you'll get 15 different articles. Everyone should consider it if they can. If there's not a legitimate reason for them not to, I would definitely consider it, because people are willing to spend money on their kids. People are willing to spend money on their pets. And emotionally, for some people, those are like almost the same thing. And so, dive in head first on pets. You'll make money.
Definitely. That's all for today, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. Easton, if you want to do any shout outs, please take the floor.
Oh, well, thank you for the opportunity. I'm super active on LinkedIn. So if we have any hosts in the audience, any
Yes, you are.
folks who are interested, jump on LinkedIn, find me at Easton Hill, and I'd be happy to connect, answer questions there, all that jazz. Thanks, Frank.
Awesome. All right. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you. See you next week.